And so I think a lot of people change their mind. They see that something is really stinky. And they also understand that, it's just, government, the politicians are taking over the economy, that we are living in a centrally planned or centrally administered economy, like, the Nazis back, during the Second World War.
Thursday, April 6, 2023, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Claudio Grass. Claudio is a proponent of sound money and a sound society, and he also runs a precious metals advisory business in Switzerland. And I spoke to Claudio for the first time on the channel back in November of 2022, and we spoke about the globalist agenda, that there is a great awakening, we hope, of course. And today I've decided to speak with Claudio again about what's going on in Switzerland, about Credit Suisse. And if you want to learn more about Claudio and what he does, I recommend you watch our first video because we covered that a lot. So Claudio, welcome to the channel.
Mario, thank you very much for the invitation.
You're welcome. So let's get on with Credit Suisse and also what you're just telling me about prior to starting this interview about the really kind of a war against the Swiss system that you think has been happening since the late 90s, and maybe Credit Suisse is just like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I mean, if you can entertain the idea that everything is a Muppet show and that these guys are running a script, I mean, then you have an open mind. And to me, I mean, Corona has always been a kind of the crowning of a decade-long war against Western civilization. And now this Credit Suisse incident is basically the crowning of a long-term war against Swiss history, the culture, because I always thought that when we see what's happening today, basically we have two sides. We either go centralized. That's what the World Economic Forum and all the sociopaths basically wants, New World Order and so on, or we go on the decentralized side. And of course, when we look at the best example of a prosperous nation who became extremely wealthy because of non-centralization, because it was based on the principles of subsidiarity, meaning the municipality is the most important. If a municipality has a problem and he cannot solve alone, then they can call, the state to support them. But everything was really from the bottom up. And that's why we also have 7 presidents and not only one. So even there, the division of power that has been inflected, in Swiss history. And I think now with Credit Suisse, I mean, the main signal, besides all the noise, to me has been, if you are in the banking system, there is no way you can hide anywhere. Not even Switzerland is a safe haven. When you think about those cocoa bonds from the Credit Suisse, I mean, only in Switzerland you sign cocoa bonds, which basically say if the state has to jump in or, emergency situations happening, that they can default 100%. So I think that's why, the central banker of Saudi or Qatar had to leave, because he was signing such a deal. Because nobody expected that, Switzerland might have confiscation of private property, emerging law, that the politicians are taking over again. And this now happened. And I think it also has damaged seriously, the financial place, Switzerland as such. But unfortunately, I have been confronted with a lot of people always ask me in the past, I would like to open up a bank account in Switzerland. Do you believe it's more safe? And I always said, listen, in the banking system, property rights are only of temporary nature. And because they can always call for, we have to act. If you don't react, the world is going down in 24 hours and so on. So they can always do whatever they want to. So I think that has been the message. I also believe that, because if you understand once that central banks are responsible for boom and bust, I mean, then we also understand that, when they reduce interest rates, inject tremendous amount of credit into the system. We have a boom. And of course, when they do the opposite, then we have a bust. And I think the bust is coming. And I think the second lessons, or the second signal that I basically identified for myself was, yeah, we have seen that the big banks have profited from the whole situation with Silicon Valley Bank and so on. And then also Yellen came out saying, yeah, the smaller banks in a crisis scenario, we cannot solve them. We cannot rescue them. We can only rescue the too big to fail. And of course, that would also fit into, we are living in a centralized system, and this system is even centralizing further. So it's exactly a bit going in that direction. So that's a short summary of the Credit Suisse Muppet Show, which occurred, over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and how do you think it's going to affect the Swiss people? Like the guarantee, I think, is 100 billion Swiss francs by the Swiss government. Because the Swiss National Bank, I think a couple of months ago, it said it had losses of $150 billion already. So how is that going to filter through into the Swiss economy? I can only see more stagnation for Switzerland, more inflation. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the risk when it comes to UBS and Credit Suisse combined are even worse, of course, if they would have been separated. So I would not even exclude that Switzerland might be the first nation going into bankruptcy. I mean, everything is possible. I mean, then you have some other guys, they basically are saying, hey, but you have a very rich national bank. The Swiss National Bank holds a lot of tremendous amount of assets and so on. I don't know. I mean, let's assume the SNB has to liquidate to bail out, the Swiss banks and so on. I mean, they would have to sell, euro and dollar stuff into a falling market. Maybe that would then even, I mean, they have still 900 billions or something. So they could even, then be punished, that people would say, yeah, they started, the crash started in Switzerland. And then, I mean, yeah, I think if this would happen, of course, the whole Eurozone would also, I mean, the whole world would be, so we don't know how long it can last, and how these sociopaths are able to support the big ones. And at the end of the day, it's really, I mean, it's always hyperinflation is really only the case once people lose faith into the institutions. Honestly, I truly believe we are on this way. The trends are visible. So, I mean, if you have your wealth in the banking system, you can clearly see that the trend is negative, that the risks are tremendous, that confiscation is going to happen anywhere, and so I think, yeah, people should just, think about that over Easter, and yeah, prepare a bit. We always have a choice, and when it comes to private property rights kept outside the banking system, then I truly believe that Switzerland still is one of the best jurisdictions, because you cannot. Our politicians, they can always call for emergency law because they have to solve a bullshit problem in the mainstream theater, and using that force and that power and put pressure on the people so that they really have to save the planet, whatever. I mean, then they can do it, but they cannot confiscate gold, because then still, they would have to, I mean, we can hand in an initiative, or we can call in, I mean, it would be a change of the constitution again, confiscating private property. So they would have to bring it in front of the people. So at least it always gives us time as well. And so I think, yeah, let's wait and see. But I'm really expecting, that this banking crisis just started, and that it will go further down. And, when it comes to this, I have seen this Credit Suisse General Assembly 2 days ago. So the Swiss are really pissed, when you have 70 years old guys, coming up with harsh, blaming Credit Suisse to be an American Muppet. So that has been quite surprising. But I think, yeah, even in the case of Credit Suisse, if people knew that this is coming, that Credit Suisse has a problem, and in a falling market, that the problem will become bigger, of course. And so they always had, time to act and to move to another bank. but everyone just believes, that they can do and remain in the same setup. And once the system goes down or banking goes down, that then the government jumps in and pays them, what they have lost, because people just don't, they don't are interested in self-responsibility, taking action.
I see here you're talking about the shareholder meeting or general assembly. Looks like this shareholder, he says he pulled out a handful of walnuts from his pocket, proffering them to laymen as the fair exchange for shares in once a great bank. So that's pretty amazing that this is happening in Switzerland. And maybe you could tell us what the impact or the reaction by, let's say, the people that you work with in Switzerland has been to this banking crisis. Are people buying more gold in Switzerland, getting their funds? I don't like to say money out of the bank because there's nothing in the banks, it seems, but credit. Maybe you go over that a little bit.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, Credit Suisse was a case that they thought it's never possible. That such a Muppet show can never occur. And so I think a lot of people change their mind. They see that something is really stinky, and they also understand that it's just government, the politicians are taking over the economy. That we are living in a centrally planned or centrally administered economy, like the Nazis back, during the Second World War. So one lesson was that, again, and which is a good thing, more and more Swiss are waking up. They understand that these politicians are crazy, irresponsible, idiots. And on the other side, the second lesson was a lot of people also moved away from the smaller banks. They went to the banks who are considered too big to fail. So I think UBS was profiting, Raiffeisen was profiting, PostFinance, the banks, Zürcher Kantonalbank banks, who are basically too big to fail, have that kind of status, and the smaller ones were losing. And I think this is a trend, most likely visible not only in Switzerland, it will be also visible in the rest of the world. Because Corona was going directly against the small and mid-sized companies. And when we look at this banking crisis and what Yellen said, the majority of the small banks are basically financing, the SME business. And if they go, then they go. And interestingly, we had this Hildebrand. He used to be the former president of the Swiss National Bank. So that guy gave an interview a few months ago, and he was saying, this time we cannot solve inflation with rising interest rates. We have to destroy the demand side. So basically, he never explained exactly what he understands when it comes to that. But of course, when you let banks go bankrupt, smaller ones, wipe out capital of people which are not system relevant. Then of course they have no money, they cannot consume. And maybe the other stuff is, that's why it's all also absurd, But still, people don't react. They I don't know.
That's a good point you made there about, like, it's ironic that people are taking their money out of the smaller banks, which are probably actually safer than the big banks. The only reason the big banks are safe is that they're politically connected and too big to fail. But the big banks, Credit Suisse, UBS, and all the big banks around Europe and North America, they're up to here with derivatives bets. To say that a bank, let's say Bank that I know of back in the Bernese Oberland, that to say that is not safe, it's like it's not true. But it like you said, they've done a very good job at destroying the small size and medium-sized businesses during the lockdowns. And I think the strategy from the powers that be is to drive all the money away from the small banks into the big banks, and that will also ruin a lot of small businesses again. And or small business are going to have to play ball. They're going to have to go down the ESG route that BlackRock is pushing and the World Economic Forum. So yeah, I think that's a bad thing. But you were talking, as I said earlier, about how there's been a kind of an agenda to really change the culture in Switzerland. And I have lived in Switzerland, as you probably know, and I left Switzerland in the early 90s. And back then, Switzerland was very different from what it's now. There wasn't a housing bubble. Um, people didn't borrow and spend as much. And I think Switzerland also had its currency was 40% backed by gold. So maybe you can touch upon on that side of things.
Yeah. I mean, the whole campaign started end of the 90s with Clinton and D'Amato, and this, that we were hiding a lot of Jewish money, undeclared funds, and this number accounts and so on. And I think even before that time, we did 4 or 5 researches in Switzerland. Banks were trying to find out who owns the account and so on. So they did that actively. I mean, the only guys who basically confiscated all the Jewish money was, the guys in Britain and the US government. They confiscated everything. But here in Switzerland, we still, I mean, also that so much Jewish money was in Switzerland. It was completely ridiculous. Because I mean, Switzerland was small. If you really wanted to put your money in a safe place during the Second World War, I mean, then you basically brought it, to the UK or to the United States, but definitely not.
Yeah, because I heard the U.S. Treasury froze $200 million of Swiss assets during World War II.
They froze. Yeah, there was the gold that they have frozen, because I mean, we just had, Switzerland had this during the Second World War. I mean, we had this special status. So we had in 1933, I think the Bank of International Settlement has been founded, with, I think it was Rockefeller and, the Nazis in Germany, Hjalmar Schacht and some other guys. And then, of course, you always needed a neutral spot. And so Switzerland was also not forced, but, everyone, all the powers surrounding us, they wanted that Switzerland remains on a gold standard. So during the Second World War, the only nation on a gold standard was Switzerland, because we had the Nazis and, the Allies and the Americans. Everyone wanted to trade in Swiss francs and then take the gold out, even, countries who remained neutral. But, everyone knew exactly what's going in, what's going out. And so I wrote once an article looking into that. It was together with Professor Angelo Codvilla. I think he was professor Boston University. He wrote the book about Switzerland, A Hard Place Between the Alps. The article is visible on my blog, but it's maybe a few years ago. And so basically there we looked into, if Switzerland somehow profited from the gold trading, and this was absolutely not the case. So we even ended up with less gold after the Second World War than when we started. So I think the official Switzerland, that was all fine. What the bits did, of course, we have no clue. But but if you told someone
there's a story about the BIS. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
In 1938, when the Germans invaded Czechoslovakia, the Germans, they took the gold from the Czechoslovaks, and also the Bank of England allowed the BIS to take the gold from Czechoslovakia and give it to the German account at the BIS. So if anything, I would say they continue to do that. And it's scandalous that the BIS, which isn't even a Swiss bank, that they kept dealing all sides in the war, the Germans, the Allies, they kept trading with each other and making probably billions of dollars. And a lot of that money, of course, was from the people they persecuted throughout Europe, including the Jews. So, yeah, and so that's another thing I wanted to tell you about. I don't know if you've read The Tower of Basel by Adam Libor. It's a very good book about the BIS.
Yeah, no, I have the book here at home. I think I read half of it. I didn't finish it, but yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, we have these structures, they are in place. And as I said the last time, I mean, yeah, Switzerland, because we had these decentralized structures, because we were armed and neutral, 7 presidents, very weak political structures, you know, no secret service, which was, so I mean, just a lot of freedom. And of course, you know, also crooks like freedom because they can abuse it. And I think that's, yeah, that was the main reason that they came all to Switzerland, WHO and the United Nations, you know, and Gavi, and it just goes on. I mean, it's not that, so because right now a lot of people, even in Switzerland, they believe that we were stealing money from the Jews, that we became so prosperous and so successful because of war. And we were doing, you know, all the dirty business, so we helped to prolong the war. I mean, this is all nonsense, as far as I know. I mean, I also digged into history. I was trying to find out more. I talked to a lot of, you know, also people with a tremendous, I mean, much older than I am, with much more experiencing also the Second World War. And I think, you know, we can be, yeah, Switzerland made the most out of it, you know. And on the other side, it was strategically extremely important, you know, for the Nazis and for the Italians. I mean, we were neutral, so we always said, okay, as long as you don't attack us, you're allowed to transport goods through the tunnel in the Gotthard, you know, from north to south. But we always we denied they were not allowed to transport troops or ammunition. It was more logistics, food, that kind of stuff. Sometimes, you know, armed, insured soldiers. That was also okay. But even there, you know, I think we made a pretty good job. We stayed out of the war. We took more Jews in than any other nation, if you look at the size of the country. And now, of course, for the last 20 years, there has been really this story that Switzerland is the belly of the beast. And I think that really has been done because, yeah, we are the antidote. You know, we are the antidote to this current system, because the history and also the basis for a successful country such as Switzerland was the non-centralization. You know, really that everything was self-help for self-help. You know, the municipality is important. If I'm not happy in the municipality of Hünenberg because they are raising interest rates or they decided something I don't like, I always have the possibility to vote with my feet and move 500 meters into the municipality of Cham, which has different tax rates and so on. So this kind of competition, you know, competition of ideas, competition of different systems, that basically kept, you know, Switzerland in check, and also our politicians, of course. And as you said before, you know, during 2000, our politicians came up, were saying we have to modernize the institution. We're not going to change anything tremendously, you know, but they took out the bulk gold backing. You know, it was really in the constitution that 40% of all the money in circulation needs to be backed up by physical gold. This has been taken out, and there was not even a single article about this. You know, so they never wanted to have a conversation. And in the year 2000, I mean, even I had, that was the moment when I realized I have no clue about the world where I'm in, but I had no clue when it comes to gold. So I learned it then a few years later. But yeah, I mean, you know, since East and West has been unified again, you know, the fall of the wall and the Soviet Union, WAPA collapsing. I mean, it was tremendous, you know, for especially the US. You know, you can pump in credit into new markets with billions of people. And so this credit expansion, and then of course Credit Suisse, I mean SKA and SPG, you know, they purchased O'Connor and Warburg, and Credit Suisse First Boston received the primary dealer status from the Federal Reserve. So it was really, you know, hey guys, now the Las Vegas is open also for Switzerland. And then you had this cultural change in the middle of the 90s, you know, think global, act local, all this American, you need an executive MBA to compete on a global scale, and a tremendous amount of credit, new economies, you know, the new economy, the first dot-com bubble. And now, of course, the outcome is 20 years later, yeah, Switzerland is much more centralized. The municipalities have much less responsibilities. Same goes for the state. And on top of it, Switzerland since 2008 is the highest indebted nation on the private level, because everyone has been pushed into real estate. And so yeah, it has. I always thought, how would the Swiss have reacted if Corona would have come in the year 2000? When they were not indebted, not servants and slaves of their debt. I think it has a lot of impact. And then, of course, now we are, 50% of foreigners. We always had people coming from abroad to Switzerland, but they always had the right motivation, less taxation, less government, more freedom, more liberty, more netto income, and less prosecution. The Germans built up our industrial, SOVs. In 1840, SOVs had 1,500 employees. Even before we had this, we were forced into this confederation in 1848, which basically is going against, back then, the rule of law. Even to claim the Confederation Helvetica of Switzerland as we know it, basically it's not true. It has been forced on us. It was a break with the current law.
That's interesting. So you're saying, because for the viewers, in Switzerland, the states are called cantons. So prior to 1848, the cantons were very independent, right?
Yeah. And you also had every canton, it was called the Tagsatzung. But every canton, whenever you wanted to change something, 100% of the states had to agree. And so in 1848, basically, the Catholics lost, the Protestants won. We had in the Civil War, we had 5 people dying, so it was not that harsh. But so they have been, the Protestants, basically, they forced the Catholics to accept the Confederation. And that's where we are. So I think, yeah, especially, as I said, especially because you were living in the 90s. I have seen both. I'm 52 now, so I know the world before, the middle of the 90s and after. And for me, it was really always a break. That's when I realized, that the whole Muppet Show, the media, and all the education and everything is streamlined.
Yeah, I noticed because I left Switzerland in '92 and I came to the UK, and I noticed in 1997 everything just like property prices started going through the roof. People started, the credit was much easier, and it seems to have gone on since then. And it's interesting that you said they lured the Swiss bankers into the global casino. And I always remember, because I'm a little older than you, I'm 58, in the 70s and 80s, the Swiss bankers were thought of as boring and, a safe pair of hands. But now, with what's happened at Credit Suisse, all that's going out the window. And it's I think it's, like you said, it's a reflection of this globalization, centralization. And I wanted to ask you, because I see you work with Liechtenstein, and I was listening to some videos during lockdown, and of the I think there's a prince in Liechtenstein who's like a fund manager, and he was talking about how Liechtenstein works. And even though it's a tiny little country, it has municipalities, and they're all very independent. So do you think Liechtenstein is what Switzerland was maybe 30 years ago? And how do you see the future for that small country?
Yeah, I'm happy that we have Liechtenstein. It's a different structure. Of course, it's the monarch, has a veto power. So basically, they have a parliamentary system with all the politicians, but the monarch always has a veto power. If he disagrees, he basically can say no. So that's unique when it comes to Liechtenstein. And Hans Adam, he wrote the book, the State in the Third Millennium. It's really something I can recommend. I think especially the first 2/3 of the book are excellent. Afterwards, he talks about the UN, which is a bit strange. At least I don't like the UN part. But he was, he's talking about, silver, gold, that's real money. He's talking about that government should be a service agency, that there is a system. people should be able that they can use a system, but they should not be forced into a system. And of course, when it comes to secession, you know, in the municipality, if they gather 1,500 signatories, they basically can bring that in front of, you know, the people in Balzers or Triesen or Vaduz and Schaan, and then they can vote if they want to leave Liechtenstein. So it's very, so they also understand them a bit more as a, I mean, the Liechtenstein, they don't get a single franc in taxes. They're completely self-responsible. I think by now, I mean, yeah, so they also, I think it's one of the richest royal family. I mean, the interesting stuff with Liechtenstein was that they have always been advisors, but never really powerful. And so they also host this Center of Austrian Economics, the European Center for Austrian Economics. That's what is also based out in Liechtenstein, and also is Prince Michael. So they are classic liberals. They understand, they have been, you know, their wealth has been confiscated several times in the past. So they know, you know, what collectivism can do. They see the threats of all these collectivistic, Marxistic movements. So I think it's a good jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Of course, army-wise, you know,
this is the guy who wrote the book, right?
Yeah, that's Hans Adam.
What's the book called again?
The State in the Third Millennium.
All right. Yeah. So you recommend that book, yeah?
I would recommend to read that book. Yeah, here, the Viewpoints and Books. Hans Adam has written the political treatise.
Oh yeah, there you go.
The State in the Third Millennium.
Yeah.
It was published in late 2009.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. So you don't, I wouldn't like also the part about the UN as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's a bit, to me, you know, to sum it up, what are the foundings, you know, after 3 years, Corona, Ukraine war, blowing up pipelines, having, you know, orchestrated banking crises, emergency law all the time, war. I mean, you know, we go towards war. I mean, these idiots want to have war. So I mean, so I think we said it all. We discussed the last time. We were saying that people are standing at the crossroad. They have to take a decision. Either they go with the system, they remain in the banking system. Most likely, they're going to lose everything. And then the Muppet Show might show up and say, okay, here you get we give you a universal income. You know, you will also receive a central banking digital coin, and then, but you have to download the app and take the vaccine and whatever. Eat bugs.
Yeah, I think here in the UK on the 23rd of April, we're having like on our phones, we're gonna have like an alert, you know, emergency alert from the government, and all the phones they've been, you know, Apple and all the other devices, they've put in this app, you know, that will ring, but you can how can I say, you go into settings and I forgot the word now. You can make it so it doesn't ring.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've done it, but you kind of wonder. It's almost like they're trying to scare us, you know, into thinking that things are not good when they're going to send emergency alerts to, you know, 70 million people in the UK, or whoever how many million have a mobile phone. So what would you say to the viewers, though? Because not everyone can go to Switzerland, or let alone Liechtenstein, because there's still good places to be. Like you said, private property is still respected in Switzerland. Maybe not in a bank, not your property in the bank, but outside in Liechtenstein as well. So what would you say to the people that wouldn't have don't have a chance to do that wherever they may be?
Yeah, I mean, of course I'm biased, but I only say and suggest what I do myself. So, and that's why I started. When I realized how the monetary system is working, which has been the start of my digging, and then I went into philosophy, geopolitics, history, and so on. The logical consequence was, you know, that I buy physical precious metals, that I turn my fiat into something tangible, a hard asset, something which has been money for a few thousand years, some money which has been chosen by the people, and it did not came into existence because of a government regulation or whatever, and so for me also, I mean, I don't care, I don't know, I don't know how long it will last until we're going to see chaos and disorder. I think we're on the path to it, but I'm positioned myself, and I feel pretty comfortable, whatever is coming, that I will not be wiped out, that my family will not be wiped out, that I'm also mobile. You can always take your precious metals with you. And so at least that I have something to start with. And at the same time, of course, I'm surrounded with like-minded individuals. We still have a lot of freedom-loving individuals here in Switzerland, and they understand that they have to leave the densely populated areas, the big cities. They're also preparing. I mean, it's a thought process, but I think, yeah, 3 years ago, Corona was really the official invitation to leave the system because they will lock us out. And I think now it's even going further. And people always have a choice, but I think what a lot of people, really a lot of people, unfortunately, act like domesticated humans. Give me food and shelter, and I do whatever the government is telling me. And so I think we have all over the world, we have 30% of the people who understand that this is not their Muppet Show any longer, and that they also understand that they have to prepare for a transition period. And I think another 30% are really hardcore statists, sociopaths. They only can live. They cannot work. They need to live from other people's money. They also believe that they are so wise and so intelligent that they need people that they can command and exploit. And but then I think we have these 40% in the middle, which are right now mostly struggling also with cognitive dissonance, because the Swiss, especially when it comes to the Swiss, they have been pretty naive when it comes to the government. We had a weak government all the time. They brought us twice through a world war and so on. So the Swiss have always felt, pretty comfortable because, the government action were different than in the surrounding countries, never as strong, never as totalitarian. But of course, this now has changed over the last few years. They have seen it. But I think we still have a lot of freedom-loving individuals, self-responsible, highly productive people, not fearful. Fear is always paralyzing, and so they also they do what they are saying, which is also important. And so I think, let's buy hard assets, take stuff out of the banking system, parts of your wealth. Look at it as an insurance, as a pension for a harsh crisis scenario. And wherever you are, look around, and you have to define, if even most likely even in Britain, you might have certain spots which are more secure than others. But I mean, it's an island, and so I also don't know. I mean, maybe I still hold up to the idea of Switzerland. We have this mountain area, which is pretty okay. We don't know exactly how the future will play out. Will it be, a big war? Will it be, this mass migration and just chaos and racial war and LGBTs fighting against, Christians and so on? I mean, who knows? Who knows how far it can go? But I think that's something, people have to think about. And maybe now Easter is a good time, to reflect a bit, to open up the mind.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think what you said there about fear is important, not to be fearful, to try to learn what's going on so you can protect yourself and your family. So, Claudio, before we go, could you tell the viewers where they can find your work? I think I have it here. I can share it at the same time. You can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's easiest is definitely my homepage, claudiograss.ch. And there you have contact details. I'm writing, there's a blog, but I also have, I'm talking about me. I also introduce all the services that I can offer. And then the blog, because the aim when I started writing 11 years ago, the aim has always been, to build up trust, of course, and to write articles coming from my perspective. They're all based on the principles of liberty. They are, based on the principles of Austrian economics. As an enlightened individual, we are born free, we know the means to an end, that kind of stuff. And so really to show the people, who I am, because even now, I mean, during Corona, I mean, it was not possible to travel. And, it takes a lot until someone is sending you $1 million or $2 million, and you have never seen the guy before. So the blog and my writing has always been an important part of establishing trust, even if you don't see or meet in person the individual. And this has played out pretty well, because then you also need to be coherent, and if you change your mind, or you change so people realize and understand, and then you would go under. And I think I'm straightforward.
Yeah, consistency. I think that's
yeah.
Yeah, and
Golden rule.
Yeah, that's what I try to do here on the channel. Anyway, Claudio, thank you for sharing your views with us, and hopefully you'll come back on the channel if you have anything interesting to add, from a Swiss perspective.
Thank you very much, Mario. Always a pleasure talking to you. Wishing you a great Easter.
Thank you.
And hope to speak soon again.
Yeah, thank you very much. A great Easter to you and your family as well.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.